So for those of you that are new here, my name is Ariana. I'm an energy medicine mentor, and I work a lot with people from all over the world to help them recalibrate from a mental, emotional, and spiritual and energetic perspective, to help them not only fall in love with their lives, but also see the world from a perspective that maybe they haven't necessarily seen before. And all this does is take us out of the feeling of being victimized, the heaviness that we experience when we think things are being done to us, that feeling of having no control, which is really happening a lot right now. There's a lot of this going around. What this draws out of us is anger. So you can feel that there's a lot of anger bubbling up in the world right now, a fractured sense of hostility that I've noticed that is happening everywhere. You just have to be aware enough to notice this sense of change that nobody knows what to do with. To say that the world is changing is an understatement, right? There's a lot that's going on. And I see a lot of people saying that they can't wait for things to get back to normal. And the one big point of this is to remind you, maybe you already know this, or maybe this is new information for you, but it's not going to change back to the way it was. It's not going to get back to the way it was. We're moving into a completely new paradigm. We are transforming and changing. The whole world, the planet, all of us that are on it, we're changing and we're morphing into a completely new version. And this is taking this decade. It's not just going to happen in a year or a couple of months. If you think about how we're all just waiting for things to go back to the way that it was, this is in itself putting us in a really precocious position, because we're waiting for something that's never going to happen. What I'm more interested in is looking at how we contain the change, and how we readjust and recalibrate and change with the change. As we are looking at new ways to transform, as we are looking at new ways to create a frequency, we're lifting ourselves up to a new frequency. It's inevitable that healing will occur. When we are in a position where we step up, when we're leveling up, where we're reaching towards a completely new frequency, naturally speaking, this is a healing step. And for us to consider or want or desire for things to go back to the way they were, that's actually just taking us back a step when it comes to the ideology that healing goes this way. And we all know that healing isn't linear, and that it spirals, and that it kind of goes up and down and all around. But if you were to consider it from a linear point of view, the healing continues along with the frequency, the lifting and the higher vibrational frequencies. It's important for us all to consider how we need to heal, how we need to come back to a sense of wholeness to keep up with the ever-changing transformation and healing that's happening on the planet. Things are changing. The way we're living our lives, it's changed already. So we have this social change, economic change, and this is causing a lot of unrest. All of these things happening right now at the same time, creating the change. It's the catalyst for the change. It's no coincidence that it's all happening at the same time. If you consider how when one person, let's just consider you for a moment, like let's say you learn about something that has rocked your world, and you go through all of the emotions. So you feel the sadness and the anger and the denial and all of the things. Once we've gotten through a lot of those reactive emotions, a lot of the times what we may do is look to the one thing, person, situation that we can blame. We look backwards. We look in our past. Maybe we want to look towards our parents or our peers or the school teacher that told us that we would never be enough, or whatever it is. And we look back and we try and zone in and focus in on the one person that we can point the finger at and blame. We do all of our reconciling, and if we're lucky enough and smart enough and emotionally intelligent enough, we work through those wounds and those traumas, and then we turn around and we carry on with our lives. If you were to consider that the example of how an individual may reconcile past hurts and traumas, start to look at that from a zoomed out point of view from the collective. Start to look at how all of us, we're looking at something that's happened and we're going back in time to blame and point fingers. And we're in that stage right now where we're in the muck of trying to reconcile all of these things, especially when it comes to all of the social unrest that we may have been experiencing. We're constantly looking for someone to blame about the injustice, that this wasn't handled properly or you did this incorrectly. We're constantly in this state of blaming and shaming the other. My hope is that we actually reconcile that very quickly and just turn around and start moving on, because we're getting stuck in that very heavy cycle of victim mentality and victimization. Because the thing is that when someone else does something to you and you're constantly pointing the finger at that person, it doesn't really give you much of an opportunity to not only take responsibility for your part in it, but also just to accept it for what it is and move on. Instead of forcing other people to take responsibility for what their part in your pain was, what if we just assumed the responsibility for ourselves, both on an individual and a collective viewpoint? What if we just assumed the responsibility for ourselves and just moved on? What if we just drew a line in the sand and considered that the event or the thing that has been the catalyst for the change, that has been the catalyst for us becoming who we are, has happened for us and not to us? This is a very high level way to look at life. This is not of the 3D. A lot of the times I suggest this to people, and at first they're really taken aback. Like, how could you not make people pay for what they've done? How could you just relinquish their responsibility and turn the other way and ignore them? How can you not allow them to take responsibility for their actions? How can you not make them pay? But let me tell you something, is that it takes a lot more energy to try and make somebody else pay for their mistakes, which, by the way, you can never actually do, because it's up to them to take responsibility, which is ultimately what you're doing in the situation. If you were to hold a mirror up, you're taking responsibility for your part in that situation. You're owning it. You're recalibrating. You're actually being super grateful for the effect that that has had on your life, because it's made you who you are. And then you're carrying on with your life. You're looking for greener pastures other than sitting with your full mental capacity and emotional capacity in the past. You're plugged into something that you can't even change, instead of just living your life and being plugged into something that is of possibility. So it's this completely different way of thinking and of being. And ultimately, it all rests in this aspect of compassion and forgiveness, these very soft but beautiful, wholesome virtues that when we're in the heaviness of pointing the finger and blaming, we can't access forgiveness and compassion when we're in that state. I'm not for one second considering that I get hit on one side and I just need to turn my other cheek and get hit on the other side. It's not really where I'm going with it. It's more of a, at what point do we stop? And instead of trying to go back to the way things were, consider that we are part of this global change. And instead of thinking as this change being bad, what if this change was excellent? What if this change was exactly what we needed? What if this change was like what generations have been waiting for? What if we approach the change as something that's exciting? And maybe we have to be in situations that we would rather not be. But what if that was just a stepping stone towards the liberation and the freedom that we so seek? What if the liberation and freedom that we thought we were living wasn't that at all? Or in fact, what if it was only for a small portion of humanity? What if what we were going through now, the privilege that we have, what if what we were going through now was a complete liberation and freedom for all? What if we were just collateral? Can you take yourself out of that personal view and zoom out and consider that your life is like a blimp in the radar? It's like this blink in the eternity of consciousness of all that there was and all that there will ever be. And what if your part to play in this was just to heal and raise your own vibration to a point where you are not only facilitating your own healing, but being the healing for others as well? What if you chose to come down onto this planet right now to be the change that we wish to see in the world? Would that change the way you act and the way you think and the way you feel? Would that change what you do and how you speak to people and how you speak to yourself? Would that change your expectations? Really think it would. And which one of those two feels lighter? What feels like something that you would rather live in? I can tell you which one I choose. And it's as simple as making the decision. And yes, your body may be addicted to the heaviness and the blaming and the shaming and the pointing of the finger. You may have your identity wrapped up in that. And it may take a little while for you to separate yourself from that. But with consistency, with a devotion to being a different version of you, you can totally do it. I have no doubt, because you're here on this planet at this time. Naturally, you're an agent for change. Your soul is super intelligent. It wouldn't have just chosen to incarnate at this time because you wanted to be stuck in old ways. I can guarantee you that. This very, very simple act of consolidating your power, of coming into right relationship with what is instead of wanting what was, of being excited for the future and seeing possibility, that in itself is the defragmentation that we're looking for. This is the piecing back of all of the puzzle pieces that you may have lost over time. And if we can each do this individually, then collectively, what do you think is going to happen? If each one of us has a part to play in our own healing, naturally the healing of humanity gets restored. A lot of the times I hear these very humble musing of, I couldn't possibly only heal myself because, I have a family or I have a community and everybody else needs to be healed before me. The thing is, each person on this planet just needs to take responsibility for their own healing. They need to learn how to forgive. They need to learn how to claim their own power and take responsibility for what's theirs. That's it. You just have to take care of yourself. And if every single person did that, there wouldn't need to be a collective healing movement, because it would just naturally happen, because everybody's whole and everybody's complete and defragmented. Pointing the finger and blaming doesn't serve anyone, least of all yourself. And if you want to put on your big girl pants or your big boy pants or just your pants, then it's time now for you to look at your life and be grateful for all of the trials and the tribulations that you've experienced, even the really, really dark ones, even the ones that had you on your knees begging for mercy. And it's time to move on. It's time to move on. And we're all in a very different point in our timeline. Some of us are actually still going through that right now. And if you are watching this and you are still going through that, then heal. Take your time. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. But those of you who are watching this and you know who you are, that have been pointing the finger and blaming everyone because you don't want to take responsibility for your own actions or the things that have happened to you in the past, and you're still harping about things that happened to you decades ago, it's time to move on from an individual perspective as well as a collective perspective, because things are changing. We've got to change with it. Nothing can change the past. We know that. We only really remember 50% of what happened. So if you're tormenting yourself about something that happened, how much of that is actually true? How much of that has been blown out of proportion to serve the ego? If only 50% of that is true, then how much of it is made up? I often speak about how what is happening outside is a mirror of what you're picking up inside, or what's happening inside is then being directly reflected outside of you, like this holographic view. If you're ever concerned about what's happening in your world, then you can turn the mirror of what you're seeing back towards you to see what's actually happening inside of you. And there'll be a reflection of that in some way, shape, or form. So if you're watching what's happening in the world right now, and you're being triggered, or you're in fear, or you feel like you're out of control, or any of those things, stop for a second and consider what that means to you. Where inside does this already exist for me to be picking up on it? If you're watching what's happening in the world right now, you consider for a moment that makes you feel like you don't have any control. Stop for a minute, and instead of projecting that out there and allowing that fear to be felt by those around you, consider for a moment, where does this exist within me? Because you can't recognize fear unless it already exists within you. You recognize where it's from. Maybe you've experienced fear before in your life, gone through a period of time where you were very fearful about something happening. You can reconcile it. You can see it for what it is. See it as a memory that exists in your body, in your mind, in your experience. You come into right relationship with it. You see that it's not happening right now, that it's a past memory that you're reliving. And then you dial up the opposite of that. So in this example, fear, what's the opposite of fear for you? For me, it's faith. Faith that everything's going to work out right. Faith that we're going to be fine. Faith that this is all part of a bigger picture. Faith not in a religious context, but in a belief in something that's greater. Dial up my faith practices. I'm going to meditate more. I'm going to be more in sacred container. I'm going to turn the dial up. If it's the fear of losing control, the lack of control that I have in my life right now because of the perceived lack of control that's going on out there, well, how can I take control of my life a little bit more? Maybe it's the food that I eat, just little basic things. Maybe it's the fact that I exercise more. Maybe I take control of my calendar or my diary or whatever it is. And you take active steps towards liberating yourself from the fragmented pieces that already exist within you that are being mirrored out in the world. And each one of us will have a different variation of what that looks like for us. It's a reminder that you are in the driver's seat. Things don't happen to you. They do happen for you. It's not up to anybody else to save you from anything. There's no saving required. There's no need to save you. You are not broken. There's nothing to fix. There's just an opportunity for you to claim back your power by taking responsibility and moving on. And we can do that collectively as well. We can choose not to be in the heaviness, even if we have shit going on that is beyond our control and makes us feel sad or melancholic or apathetic. All of those emotions that we would rather run from, it's okay to have those emotions. As human beings, we are here to experience the full spectrum of emotions. But whether we get stuck in them or not is another story. We can turn and look the other way and actually move in the opposite direction. Move towards possibility. It's really, really liberating and light and a really good way to live. Thank you for being here. Feel free to pop your comments down here. I'll be here again tomorrow. That's it from me. Bye for now.